Okay, welcome to our Ask the Rebbetzin panel. Those of you who have been following Project Inspired panels know we've done Ask the Rabbi panels, as well as other programming as part of our MindFlex series that airs every week in the evenings at 9 p.m. Today we're here with our Ask the Rebbetzin panel, and we're joined by Rebbetzin Lori Palatnik, who is the founding director of Momentum, formerly the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project. Welcome, Lori, from Yerushalayim.
Thank you, Rabbi.
We're here with Mrs. Ruchi Koval, who's of Cleveland, Ohio, and the JFX, the Jewish Family Experience, out in Cleveland, who's actually currently in Lakewood, New Jersey. You shouldn't think that's such nice greenery out in Cleveland, though. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Welcome.
It's very green. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Welcome, Ruchi. And we're joined by Shoshana Kay. Shoshana Kay is the regional director of Maor, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Maor, Philadelphia,
yes.
As well as the national program director of Mikveh USA. I appreciate you taking the time and everyone's different time zone here to be with us and to continue this wonderful series. Of course, Asking the Rebbetzin is a new level, so here we are. I'm going to ask questions, and I know, and I'm going to say this is, we're airing live here, is that many of the questions we're asking, you Rebbetzins have given entire classes about, and maybe even series of classes, but the purpose of the panel is to be able to touch on these subjects in a way that's meaningful with full disclosure that not everything is going to be covered in every answer that we're giving. These are all, hot topics and full of a lot of information. So I'm going to ask the question. You'll excuse my rudeness if there's any, if we have to, switch back and forth or cut you short. But we're live on air, so everything that any part of me that's being rude is going to be live on air. Anyway, here we go. We're going to cover numerous questions. A lot of them dealing with women's issues. Some of them dealing with women's roles in Judaism, and as well as contemporary issues that women specifically and families are facing. And we hope to be able to cover that within the two-part session that we're covering today. So I'm going to jump in. I've bunched, I know we've had questions that have come in. I've bunched questions together in categories. And so a lot of them, you can ask me to repeat questions. Feel free to do that as well. But here we go. I have 4 questions that are along the same topic. And I'd like to hear, Lori, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to you first because you've been, sort of the veteran here of all the Rebbetzins out there and a spokesperson for women in Judaism. And so I'm going to go to you first.
Veteran sounds old, Rabbi. But
I know.
Fine.
So I said that to Rabbi Orlovsky, is like veteran baseball player. It's like,
most wise, not veteran, wise.
No, you know what? If there was a Hall of Fame for Rebbetzins, okay, that's fine.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The Cooperstown for Rebbetzins. Okay, doke. Here we go. The first bunch of questions are along the same line here. Looking from the outside in, Orthodox Judaism seems to be a patriarchal religious system that places men in power and puts women in a subservient position. How do you react to this statement or this view that people have about Orthodox Judaism? B of that is, why can't women become rabbis? C of that, why aren't they allowed to study Talmud and have no mitzvah to learn Torah? No commandment to learn Torah. And 4, D of that is, why can't we women be counted in a minyan or say Kaddish after a loved one? So again, it's sort of a category of questions where people are questioning or wondering about women's role, specifically when it comes to these commandments of Torah study, etc., within Judaism. Lori, floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through A, B, C, D, but I'm going to address some of them. And I'll start with, from the outside in, it looks patriarchal. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I was raised, I actually didn't grow up observant. I grew up in Toronto, Jewish, but was basically a dreidel, kind of Judaism. And it really, in my early 20s, I started my Jewish journey. And from the outside in, it really did look like a patriarchal, ritualistic system. And I was raised by a very strong feminist. And this was not for me whatsoever. From the outside in, that's what it looks like. From the inside out, it's a whole different ballgame. So first of all, if you study, because really, you know, we're the Jewish people who, we're the people of the book, but very few of us read the book. We all saw the movie, The Ten Commandments. Thank you, Cecil B. DeMille. But the book is always better than the movie. When you read the book, in Tanakh, in the Torah, in the 5 books, in the prophets, in the writings, not only are women in there, they, women rule. That's my kids used to say, like, boys drool, women rule. And it really is true. It is, if you just look at every Chag, look at every holiday, and if you understand it, if you study it, if you celebrate it in a meaningful way, in a knowledgeable way, like we just went through Shavuot, okay? Shavuot is like, so this, you know, if you study it's the giving of the Torah, of God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, to give the Torah to the Jewish people. So first of all, what was going on? The Jewish people were building a golden calf, building an idol, but the women did not participate in the golden calf, which was is considered to be a huge sin. It was like one of the major no-nos of the Jewish people, to the point where we were almost going to be wiped out. The women did not participate. God tells Moses to give the Torah to the women first before the men, right? The women got the Torah first. This is the stuff they never taught you in Hebrew school. When we went, and then you move towards this is, you know, you talk about Pesach and the Passover story. The Jewish people, finally got to the border, and the men were afraid to go in. They sent in spies. They came back. They spoke badly about the land of Israel. The women did not participate in the sin of the spies. Of the original people who came out of Egypt, it was only, except for a couple of exceptions, only the women merited to go in. That the Jewish women have a special love for the land of Israel, and that's why Momentum, the organization I run, really focuses on the women, because even God understood when he told Moses to give it to the women first, because if the women are in, okay, then everybody's in, right? If the men are in and the women are in, it's not going anywhere. If the women are in and the men are not in, we're going someplace, okay? So in general. So let me just skip to, you had a couple of issues going on there. What was D, like Rabbi?
D was, why can't we be counted in a minyan, you know, 10 people for...
Oh, yeah, so this is good. So this is a good...
or Kaddish for a loved one.
Yeah, so it's connected to what the story I just told, because again, when you study and you understand it. So what's the whole idea of minyan? So when the men were afraid to go into the land of Israel, they sent 1 man from every tribe. 12 men went in, came back, 10 out of 12 gave an evil report, which caused the Jewish men to say, we don't want to go in. God says, you don't want to go in? Now you can't go in. Now they changed their mind? No. And now they have to wander for 40 years. Why? So a whole generation of men will die out. So this is the source of minyan. Like, why 10 men? Because of these 10 men. I remember. So what happens is that now that minyan became a rectification for the sin of the spies. 10 men came back to take the people away from God, Torah, in the land of Israel. And from now on, 10 men have to gather in order to bring people closer to God, Torah, in Israel. So when my daughter, who was sent to a very strong Jewish school, when I said to her, I said to her at one point, I said, you know, there are people today who want to count women as part of a minyan. She goes, how insulting. That wasn't our mistake. That was your mistake. So many things from the outside in look like a put down to women. It's actually completely the opposite. Completely opposite. And I do have to say that women can say Kaddish. They are not obligated to say Kaddish because it is a time-bound mitzvah. But women say, I know many women who say Kaddish, and this is not something that is prohibited.
Excellent. I mean, it's interesting that you're looking at minyan as sort of this rectification, where it's sort of like, it's not necessarily this privilege. It's sort of like you got stuck doing this because you messed up.
It's not that you got stuck doing it. It's that this is a rectification. You're not stuck with it. This is part of you earning your way back to all these things, to God, Torah, and Israel. And this is something that women didn't do. So you see that so many things, it's maddening to me. Can I mention another one? Like wearing a kippah. So you see women putting on a kippah? Like why does a man wear a kippah? It's not from the Torah. It's rabbinic that became law. That why does he wear it? Because he has to remember there's a God above him. Can I tell you a quick story? So years ago, we were living in Toronto, and it was Erev Shabbat. It was Friday afternoon. and there was like a street festival, and so when my kids wanted to go, so I brought my little, it was my two youngest, not my two at the time, a girl and a boy, and we went to the street festival, and there was a woman drawing caricatures, and she said, and my kids were like, can we do this? And it was free. I'm like, great. So my daughter sits down, she's drawing her in a funny way, and she's, what do you like to want to be? Like, I like to read books. Then my son sits down, and my son at the time was like, I don't know, like maybe he was 4 years old, and she says, take off your beanie, and my son's like this. Okay, and she says, and I said, no, we're religious Jews, and the boys, and the men, they wear those. Oh, she was very respectful because she wasn't Jewish. And then she's like, I don't understand. Why does she have to wear one? Why doesn't she have to wear one, but he has to wear one? So what am I going to tell her? So I said, I said, it's to remember there's a God above you. I said, a man without this thinks he's God. She goes, oh, I got a guy who should wear one of those.
So, Lori, I want to piggyback on what you're saying, because I think a sort of overarching idea here is that the Torah obligates us to do stuff that we wouldn't do on our own, that are hard for us to do on our own, right? Anything that the Torah says, thou shalt not fill in the blank, right? And sometimes you're like, ew, who would do that? But the only reason the Torah told us, the only reason God had to command us not to do it is because for some human beings, that's their natural inclination. The Torah doesn't have to tell us to do things that we're all going to do anyway, right? So like, I think about Momentum, right? Formerly the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project. And if you think about how many women typically go in a year and how many men typically go in a year, women are just naturally, I think this is true like across faiths, across races, ethnicities, women are naturally moved to get together in social groups and do spiritual things. That's just a fact. You can call it yoga, you can call it a book club, I don't care what you call it. Women do that stuff. Men don't. They parallel play. They go bowling and they go golfing. And do they have kids? I don't know. Are they real? I don't know. Are they Jewish? Maybe, right? So the Torah has to obligate men to do stuff that they wouldn't typically do on their own, and in terms of what Lori mentioned about time-bound mitzvot, for anybody who has read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, about how, women in corporate America need to stand up for their rights and say, no, women are not the same as men. Women need allowances for their womanhood, and they need different kinds of bathrooms, and they need allowances for childcare, and they need allowances for pregnancy and pumping at work and all that kind of thing. Like the Torah was so ahead of the curve. The Torah said way back, you know what, women, you're exempt from time-bound mitzvot because we want you to allow, if you can and you have the ability and it's your time of your life to do this, we want you to be able to plug into your family without feeling a shred of guilt. That's so progressive when you think about it. And for women who are not in that stage of life or who do not have children, whether not by choice or by choice, that's okay. Go ahead and do those mitzvot. They're not disallowed. They're simply exempt.
Amazing.
Excellent. Can I add something else that the Torah is way ahead of their time? Like if you think about the ketubah, which is the marriage contract. So what is a ketubah? Chances are you haven't read your ketubah lately, and if you do, it's in Aramaic. I don't know how your high school Aramaic is, but it talks about a man's responsibilities and obligations to his wife, and if it doesn't work out, this is what she owes him. Okay, if he doesn't fulfill his obligations, she can divorce him. And I have to tell you, it's a prenup. Okay, before Jane Fonda married Ted Turner, this is to protect women. Like as Ruchi is saying, the Torah is so ahead of its time in terms of.
It's so funny that they're like framed on the dining room, framed in the dining room. You're like, here's your prenup just in case it doesn't work out, guys.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I'm coming from a different perspective because you ladies are working with women. So my college students will often say to me, like, that is so misogynistic. That is like so sexist. Why can't I be in a minion? Aren't I a good college student? Right? Don't I look like I'm 18?
Yeah. Oh,
You do very easily. You
Guy
look great.
Friedman doesn't know what to say with himself. Like, is he supposed to say, yeah, you look like you're 18? Poor man.
I told you, ignore me.
Don't I look like I'm a teenager? Okay. So they'll be like, that is just so, so typical. That's so typical. So I do, on our Shabbatons, I give a class like Judaism Uncensored or Judaism Up Close and Personal. And we always discuss this idea of minion. It's so interesting that I too, like Lori, grew up in Toronto, and I was so offended by the fact that I was barred from all of these things that men could do. But what we're doing is we're harming ourselves as Jews, because most of us have college education and intellect, but we're coming into Judaism with like a kindergarten level knowledge of what is our Torah, our instruction manual. And the fact of the matter, when you look at minyan, that's exactly what Lori said about the spies. It's a crazy thing because, you know, I'll never forget a few years ago, our students, especially at Temple University, loved, it's very difficult to give anything today that has political analogies. So when I used to speak about this president or that president, it was much easier. So now I'm not even going to go into politics.
I noticed there were no questions about politics on this panel.
No questions about politics. But I would ask the students, tell me something. Let's pretend there was like a school, an elementary school board meeting, and it had 10 parents at this board meeting. And that night, the most important person at the time, so who would you like it to be? You want it to be Oprah, you want it to be Michelle Obama, whoever you desire, who would you be? So the students would come up with very different, interesting answers. So think about whoever that person is that you think, wow, if they came to my school and I could ask them for anything, they would come to this board meeting and they show up and there's only 9 parents. And this person, let's say it's Oprah Winfrey, a mother's evening, and even though she's not a mother, or some significant, let's say it's Lori Palatnik coming to, you know, the shul meeting of 10 women and only 9 women show up and each woman had to be voted in and she was there for a purpose. Could 9 women and Lori pass a new bylaw regardless of how unbelievable Lori is? Absolutely not, because each person there is there for a specific reason. So often as women, we look at Judaism and say that is so unfair. But really the truth is, if we come to understand it, you know, when you drive, ladies, I don't know if you have it, but near us, you know, when you drive to a drive-up banking and you hit the button, that drive, like the lazy banking of today, you hit a button, it goes up a chute, and there goes your banking. So really, Jewish law tells us that for a man to have the same level of efficacy of a woman's prayer, he has to be in a minyan to create a reparation for what Lori said. But when I'm praying alone at any place in my house or on the street or on the beach, my prayers are like the drive-up banking. I hit a button and go, shh. If a man prays alone, his prayers, sorry, Rabbi Friedman, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your prayers will still get to the same place, but they're going to go, shh, 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 shh. And you know, that's the magnificence about Judaism. The more we learn, the more we come to understand, whoa. Well,
I think
the perception that I had was not correct.
I think that's really the common denominator really in the answers given here is that really if people are looking outside into Judaism as a patriarchal system, delve in a little more, come from the inside out and recognize why it is the way it is, and you'll recognize that really it's not such a patriarchal system inside.
You know, it's bigger than that too, Rabbi, because I think that this is something I call the great synagogue mistake. You know, Lori calls it looking from the outside in. I think a lot of Jews who didn't grow up so connected and involved, Judaism was defined by what happens in the synagogue. In fact, Judaism was often outsourced to the synagogue. The rabbi is the one who knows what to do. I don't know what to do. The rabbi is the one who knows how to read Hebrew. I don't know how to read Hebrew. So if you're going to come into religion and only look at what's happening in the synagogue, you know, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, the men run the show. That's so sexist and misogynist, you know, and as Lori says, it would be understandable for you to view things that way. But Judaism, the synagogue was never meant to be the central locus of your Judaism and your spirituality. The home was. And, you know, I don't want to make the mistake of saying, oh, women are awesome. Let's throw the men under the bus. They're the ones who need this. That's not true either. Judaism says simply that there are male and female energies in this world and that men and women each carry different strengths into this universe and that we need to mutually support one another, you know, in this synergistic approach to achieving spirituality and making a difference in this universe. So I think a big piece of it is looking at Judaism through this myopic view of synagogue. That's never...
So, Rookie, I totally agree with you. Do you know why that the synagogue? I would meet people sometimes, I remember in Toronto meeting people when my kids were young, and they would find out I'm a rabbi's wife, and they immediately start confessing. I don't know if people do that to you guys.
Oh, I always say I have a sign on my forehead that says "Confess to me."
Yeah. So
tell me all your sins.
They would say I'm such a bad Jew, and I always say confession is
such a bad Jew.
But they start confessing, and they start saying, like, you know, like being very apologetic. Like, I hardly ever go to synagogue and I'm such a bad Jew. And I would say to them, the definition of a good Jew is not somebody who's shul going. So Ruchi, why did it become that the synagogue suddenly became like, if you go to shul, you're a good Jew, okay? Why did the synagogue suddenly become the center of the Jewish community? Why? Because the definition of a good Christian is somebody who's church going. And I explained to them that that's not Judaism. That's not Judaism. Because they would say to me, you know, I hardly ever go to synagogue. I go, you know, I hardly ever go either. They're like, what? I go, yeah. Like I got little kids with this. And I said, thank God I don't have to go.
That confessing is also Christian, that whole confession thing.
So and I say
the idea of Judaism being like so hierarchical, like only the rabbi knows what to do. That's not a Jewish idea at all. The Jewish idea, the Torah was given in the desert because it's ownerless. It's everybody's.
So what's the goal? So I say to them, so what is the definition of a good Jew? It's not, you don't have to go to shul to be a good Jew. It's your relationship with Hashem. It's your relationship with God. Do you have a relationship with God? Do you understand what that relationship means? Do you understand your responsibilities in that relationship? And do you understand what your role is to play in this world? That's the goal. So once you've got that down, because if you don't know what your goal is, what your job description is, you can't achieve the job. So now that I know that that is my job, now how do I, as a woman, how do I as a man, how do I as a child, how do I as a professional, how do I fill in the blank, achieve that goal?
Excellent. Okay, I want to move on to the next question, if you don't want, because I think that some of this is going to be, you know, we'll touch on within other questions as well. I'm going to go to you, Ruchi Koval, for this one, because you did touch on some of this as being a mother, the mother role of in Judaism, etc. The next two questions bunched together are as follows. Feminism started in large part as a reaction against the traditional role of women as mothers and wives. Doesn't this role keep women from self-actualization? And B of that is modern feminism posits that women should be allowed to express their femininity without being told how to act, dress, what positions they can or cannot occupy. Traditional Judaism seems to fly in the face of this philosophy, since it bars women from doing many things that they may choose as an expression of self. Meaning, how do we balance that? Again, you touched on it in terms of, like, you know, women having, you know, not being bound to time-bound mitzvahs, etc., because Judaism and the Torah recognize that women need that role. How do you balance that in light of what you call progressive thinking today?
Okay. So it's interesting that feminism was largely created by Jewish women, right? Think about the book, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. Honestly, I think the book was a lot more about dissatisfaction than about womanhood. And I think that because, you know, as I mentioned before, not every woman is a mother, not every woman is a wife. And there was no framework for that. You know, it was all very 1950s, and women were feeling very choked by that. And so Jewish women, who by definition are agitators, thinkers, ambitious, you know, world changers, as we should be. Again, that is a spiritual gift gifted to us by God for a purpose. They were looking around and they were saying, what is the meaning of life? Is it really just about starching dresses? And oh my goodness, the answer is no. But because these women were not strongly Jewishly educated, many of them didn't even think to look into Judaism for meaning. And so it was about, honestly, thank God, 7 kids, bless their souls. I love them all. But if my whole life was just about caring for their physical and emotional needs, I would have burned out 1,000 years ago. It's only because I have this spiritual goal in my mind. I am raising human beings who are going to carry my values to the next generation. I'm creating eternity. And honestly, while some women feel super fulfilled by being stay-at-home moms, and I respect that enormously, and as a woman, I have imposter syndrome. So sometimes I look at those moms and I'm like, those are real moms. Okay, another talk for another day. Mm-hmm. But I do have a need to make a difference in a larger, or I wouldn't even say larger, in an alternate arena. And that's why I do what I do. And I need to use a different part of my mind because that's how God made me. And I don't think that makes me, a better mother and a worse mother and all of that, feminism stuff, as you were mentioning. But I can honestly think of no framework that is more self-actualizing for women than the framework of Judaism. The idea that and I'm not saying this to the exclusion of men, The idea that I have a God-given soul, that I was put into this universe to make a difference in this world, that God loves me personally. I have a personal relationship with God that is not connected to a husband, that is not connected to children, that is not connected to my job, that is not connected to my rabbi, just me, woman, daughter of God. I'm like getting emotional because it's so beautiful and it's so special. I ache for more women to know this. That's why I'm involved in Momentum and Lori's amazing project. And the dress, I just want to touch on the dress for a moment. You know, again, Judaism has expectations of men and women. Are they the same expectations? They are not, because we are wired differently. And so when it comes to physicality, to sexuality, to objectifying women, which is such an important buzzword in our culture, important and rightfully so, the Torah teaches us this: men have to be more careful with whom they objectify, meaning men have to be really careful about how and what they look at. And women, and I know this is a very unpopular opinion today, so if you want to edit me out, do so, but women have to be really careful not to objectify themselves. And this is different and it's important. The way the Torah teaches me to dress in a dignified manner, because my soul is the most important part of myself, and because I don't want to misrepresent myself. I want to retain my self-respect no matter where I go. Oh my goodness, what a liberated idea.
I'm going to stop you on that because we are going to touch more on this, you know, in a question going forward, specifically about dress and objective, you know, we'll get to that in a second. But I think the point is extremely well taken in terms of knowing who you are as a Jewish woman and your connection to God as a daughter. Shoshana K., you know, you're dealing with students who might not be maybe as mature as a lot of the women that, you know, that Lori and Ruchi Koval are in touch with in terms of the trips, etc. You know, how do they view this in terms of, you know, how do you express this to people who ask this on that level?
It's really interesting because I'm actually coming from the corporate world. So when I became more observant, I was looking at things from the lens, because I also thought, you know, that Judaism, the big expression that I had in my head, the buzz phrase was like barefoot and pregnant. That was my perception, that religious women are in the kitchen having lots of babies.
One time my husband came home and I was barefoot and pregnant. I was pregnant and I was.
You know how many times my husband came home and I was barefoot pregnant in the kitchen? I'm like, I am an actual cliche.
Okay. So, you know, that was so interesting. And actually, when I started learning in Thornhill, back in the day, you know, 5 years ago when I became religious, just when I was 25. So a couple decades ago, I was amazed to see what a real liberated, empowered woman looked like. And it just so happened that God orchestrated what we call, you know, a divine providence, hashgacha pratis, that each woman that I was introduced to they seemed like the superpower, superwoman that we speak about, which today is actually interesting. That I think that's almost dangerous today, but that's a different conversation. But anyhow, what I discuss with my students, a buzzword is equality. Everyone's equal today. And I asked them, you know, tell me about the Torah. Do you think the Torah believes in equality? And they're like, well, yeah, because if you keep telling us about this Torah, that's an instruction manual, and that we can take ownership of it and be empowered by it. Of course, Judaism believes in equality. And I told them, I always say, if anyone tells you Judaism believes in equality, they are lying to you, because we don't want to believe in equality. Equality means I am the same. And my job in this world, whether it's me against a man against a woman against a woman, I cannot live in this world comparing myself to anybody. Compare, despair. If I am going to strive for this sense of equality, especially in the genders, then I am, without a doubt, minimizing what my own unique potential is. Judaism believes, the Torah teaches us that just like an apple and an orange, they're both fruits, they both have their own significance. If I make an apple orange, a GMO apple orange, I'm not going to get the best quality fruit. My job in this world is to do the best that I can with the gifts that I am given. And if God has created my soul in the form of a female, therefore I have the ability to become the best version of a woman that I can. And it's not relative to a man. It's relative to me. And it's dangerous. Equality is a dangerous thing. Judaism teaches that each of us have the unique ability to actualize our own potential.
And Lori, I just want to go to you on this because equality is a big word out there, and it's a it's a hot topic. Your thoughts on Shoshana K's equality comment with regard to women viewing it that way.
No, my Rebbetzin always says, like, don't settle and be like a man. Like, be a woman. Okay, like, why settle? So it reminds me of, you see, like, even with, forget about men versus women, like men versus men. Somebody comes from the tribe, they're a Cohen, and so there's certain responsibilities they have and certain privileges that they have. They're called to the Torah first, and when you're doing the grace after meals, they lead it, and all these things that they get to do. And if you're a Levi, and so there, my husband's a rabbi. So here's a rabbi joke. Rabbi, you're going to love this, okay? It's a rabbi joke. So guy goes. You know me well. I love rabbi jokes. Yeah, I'm sure. So the guy goes to the rabbi. The congregant goes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, I want you to make me a Cohen. He goes, I can't make you a Cohen. He says, Rabbi, I want to be a Cohen. He says, I can't make you a Cohen. He says, I'm going to give $1 million to add a new wing to the synagogue if you'll make me a Cohen. And he goes, Saul, why do you want to be a Cohen? He goes, because my father was a Cohen, my grandfather was a Cohen, and my great-grandfather was a Cohen. He goes, okay, you're a Cohen. Okay. Yeah. So obviously he was a Cohen all along. So a Cohen's not better than a Levi, and a Levi's not better than a Yisrael. And a woman's not better than a man. A man's not better than a woman. As Shoshana was saying, and as Ruchi is saying, we're unique. It's so fantastic. You are you. There is nobody like you. And the Torah is saying that there is an avenue, again, to the goal of being, not just actualizing the best woman and the best man, of achieving the goal of having the ultimate relationship with God and realizing your unique potential of who you are. And I have to tell you, I came from the world of advertising. Shoshana says she came from the corporate world. I worked for Leo Burnett. I was a copywriter. I worked in advertising. So I always said that first of all, I'm still in advertising. I just have a better product. But in advertising, I never saw.
Great line, Lori.
Thank you. So as I told you, I was raised with a very strong feminist mother. And she would have consciousness raising groups. And I knew as a little girl how to say consciousness, okay? And the women would gather once a week. And my mother said when everybody started leaving their husbands, she sort of got out of that because she was not into that women trying to be like men or women hating men. The feminism she gave me was people treating people like people. And as Ruchi was talking about being objectified, because in the world, I never saw the feminism my mother gave me actualized in the world of academia, or actually where there's a tremendous glass ceiling, and in the world of advertising. Oh my gosh, like woman with sexy hair, buy the car, get the woman. Okay, talk about being objectified in that world, and it was a shock to me, shock beyond shock. That when I walked into the traditional Jewish world and I was tiptoeing in, this is where I saw the actualization of that feminism. And the way we dress is part of it. It's like, because I am dressing in a more dignified way, then it helps a man to see me, to not objectify me, and to see me for my mind and my soul, as opposed to the world. A friend of mine told me that she had a friend who was going for a job interview. And the night before this very, very major job interview, she was going through the closet and she was asking, our mutual friend to help her pick out an outfit. And so my friend had become more observant and she pulled out a really sexy, go to the nightclub outfit. She goes, why don't you wear this? She goes, are you crazy? I would never wear that. I want them to respect me for who I am, for my mind. And so the point was taken. The point was taken. So there was a book on a bestseller list years ago. I
just want to stop because there's the next question really segues into this because, both you and Ruchi Koval mentioned, that men, have to be more careful about looking at things, women, in terms of, how they dress, etc. It's a hot topic, and a lot of people are asking.
Right, Rabbi, I just want to interrupt you. It's not just about how they dress. I said objectifying yourself. You can objectify yourself with a look and a giggle.
Totally.
Yeah.
I know. I'm segueing.
Oh, and be very immodest.
Got it. I'm exactly. I'm segueing into this next point because many people feel that, so you're telling me how to dress because it's for the men. It's like to prevent men from stumbling, etc. Like that's why I need to dress that way. Like, is that really? Is that true? Is that a misconception? People feel that like you're setting this set of rules for us, not because of us intrinsically, but it's because of how other people will view us. Your thoughts on that, Lori? Even just segueing from your.
I think I'm gonna let Shoshana. Shoshana wanted to take this.
Go for it.
My cleaning lady is vacuuming. Can you hear the vacuuming?
Oh yeah.
Should we wait, or should I just keep going?
You go. It's just fuzzy in the back.
Welcome to our house, everybody. Okay.
Send her to my house next, please.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because if you look at a Torah scroll, how is a Torah scroll dressed? When we're in synagogues, coming back to the synagogue, it's wearing this beautiful velour, like the Torah is clothed in this beautiful silver and velour, and people spend a lot of money to sponsor this. It's a very interesting thing, and if you ever look at a man that has any kind of Torah knowledge, you never see them walking around in like flip-flops and a tank top and shorts. You just don't, right? So what is this idea? From the age of 12, it is incumbent on a Jewish woman to dress a particular way. Is it really for the men that we're doing this? Am I dressing a certain way? If I'm, as a Jewish woman, we have 3 very strong Jewish women here. Every day I get dressed and I think to myself, well, today I need to look attractive, not attracting, God forbid, because of this man. Or today I need to feel like a royal princess so that no man looks at me. That is clearly not the way we are raising our daughters or raising ourselves for that matter. So it's an interesting thing that really the way we dress is because the more spiritually attuned something or someone is, the more we have to protect them and dress them for what they are. Like if there was a magnificent new diamond that was put out at Tiffany's, they wouldn't just put it out on the counter, come all to look at it. They would shine light in a certain way and they'd make sure there's beautiful velour, and then they would every night package it away to make sure it's safe and kept sacred. So too with each and every one of us. Why did I bring in the Torah and men? Because it's an unbelievable thing. We often come and think about it from a second class or a backward positioning that compared to men. Men can do anything and we can't. No. The fact of the matter is that any Jewish woman from the age of 12 is already carrying the same spiritual potential as that of a Torah, as a Torah scholar or a Torah itself. Anything that has spiritual weight to it has to be dressed, has to be packaged in the way that is commiserate with what that spirituality is.
I don't think that that's like just true of women, because again, I don't want it to be like, oh, well, men are not spiritual, they don't have to be as covered. I just think what we don't realize, and it's Allison Josephs from Jew in the City who I think highlighted this expression, something called the skin gap. If you look at how a man or a woman is dressed on a beach, right? A man is wearing these loose trunks, they go down to his knees, and the woman is wearing this super skimpy bikini. You go to a black tie event, right? The men are wearing more clothes than they've ever worn in their lives, and the women are wearing less clothes than they've ever worn in their life. Look at jeans. Look at men's jeans versus women's jeans. Everyone's like, oh, women's clothes never have pockets. Yeah, that's because they're so skin tight that if they had a pocket, you couldn't even get anything in or out of them.
Right.
It's not even like women and men are starting at the same level. And now you're like, oh my gosh, Judaism makes women dress so much. You know why there's so much less of a difference between Orthodox men and non-Orthodox men? Because men in general are always allowed to wear more clothes. You know what I mean? That's the part that's not fair.
I think that's coming from like a societal perspective. I'm speaking even about that. We lost Yossi. Yossi's still here?
That's okay.
I
can go without the rabbi. We don't need him. It's okay.
I'm talking about the fact that I should view it as something that's a gift for me. You mean I'm the same?
I hear you.
When my daughter is 12 years old, she has the same spiritual potential as that as a Torah scholar, and I just think that's a societal misnomer that women, like you said, are objectified and put in a situation that they feel a need to dress this way, or that their femininity is only expressed if I'm the less clothes that I have.
And take one look at Instagram.
Want to see from the inside. I want to see what you really are. I want your essence to shine outward, rather than
take a look at
you and see it from the outward inward.
I mean, what's going on Instagram and Snapchat with teens and even preteens, the pictures that they feel they have to post about themselves, the pictures that they're sending 6th grade girls to 6th grade boys, they feel that they have to do this to prove something. It's so sad, you know, and like, I mean, thank God, I'm so grateful, and I don't take any of this for granted, but my 17-year-old daughter, okay, who will not be seen in front of guys in a bathing suit, she only swims with other girls. She was buying a new bathing suit this season, and she sent me a link on Amazon, because that's how we talk these days. She sent me a link on Amazon. She's like, Mom, is this bathing suit too sexy? You know? What did she mean, too sexy? Too sexy for other girls? She's not taking any pictures of herself in it. She's not showing herself to men. For herself. She felt a sense of dignity. Yes, she's wearing a bathing suit because she's going swimming. And yes, certain body parts are showing that don't usually show. But even within that, you know, it's like it's kind of like what you're saying, Shoshana, that it's like there's a certain sense of dignity. I am a dignified human being. You know, you can wear a bathing suit and you can wear a bathing suit. You can wear a tank top and you can wear a tank top. You can wear shorts and you can wear shorts.
To you and to your daughter, obviously, that she recognizes her regality. She recognizes what she is. I mean, I don't know about you ladies, but I grew up with such insecurity, especially being a chubby kid. Hello, my whole life. Forget it. It was like a social nightmare, okay? That's a crazy thing. It happens to be that my girls have all different shapes and sizes, but I don't want my girls being raised based on what they look like physically. They're magnificent. Each and every one of us are so magnificent. And society told me as a young child that, like, you're less than because of your physicality. No ways. Each of us have so much to our essence, and that's what we learn from the magnificent Torah, that once we take, its essence is in the Torah itself, not in the externalities. And I just think it's so important. I want my college students to be able to create a reparation for themselves, to see, girls, you're so magnificent. It's not.
That's it. I think girls are afraid to set personal boundaries because it's so countercultural, and it takes so much guts and courage to say, I don't have to be that girl. I don't have to show my body that way. It takes so much courage. But, just coming from the other side of things, because I was raised observant and I was raised this way, and I went to, an Orthodox Jewish day school. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I was 16 and 17 years old, I didn't always love the fact that I wore skirts, and I was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be fun to wear leggings, and wouldn't it be fun to wear a tank top? I craved that, right? That was me on the outside looking in. That looks like fun. That looks liberated. That looks free, So I'm not going to pretend that, like, oh, I'm always in love with dressing modestly. I'm not, okay? And when I lead trips in July in Israel on Momentum, I am hot. Not that kind of hot. The 100 degrees kind of hot, okay? And you know what? As I become, as I continue to grow and mature and become like the greater human being, the more wisdom I see. So it's not that it's always convenient. It's not that it's always fun, because Judaism is a religion of self-discipline and transformation. And nothing that requires discipline and transformation is going to always be easy or fun or convenient. But that's how you become something amazing that you didn't used to be. That's how self-actualization happens.
Can I throw something else? Just a bonus.
Go ahead. I want to get to one more question.
Yeah, I think that Ruchi and Shoshana, they spoke about the essence of it very beautifully. But just a bonus to this, now that I'm not so young anymore, and I'm not an aerobics instructor anymore, and I've had 5 children, I like it, and I see amongst the thousands of married women who struggle sometimes in their marriages and who are trying to keep their marriages strong. I like it that my husband runs in circles where he doesn't see women, like you're saying, on the beach in bikinis, okay? And he doesn't see women who look in a way that maybe we don't look that way anymore, because you create this sacred space within yourself and within the most primary relationship that you have, and you protect that space.
I just have to say something. When I'm on an Israel trip, not Momentum, maybe one day, but or Israel trips with my college students, and we go through the very religious neighborhoods, and the girls will come back and be like, that is so disgusting. That man wouldn't even look at me. He turned away when he saw me. And I'm like, disgusting, girlfriend, are you serious? He understands what your own spiritual, sensual, sexual potential is. He's not looking at you, not because there's something wrong with you. He's not looking at you because he's protecting his own ability to see his wife in a certain way. And he's not looking at you because of the fact that he understands the power that you have. That's the Jewish woman. It's not coming from a negative place. And I think the most important thing as Jewish women is when we don't grow up with it, we almost have a negativity towards it. We see it from a lens, a very small lens.
I just want to comment, I don't have that many comments, but just to that point is that same man that you're describing, if his daughter would bring this girl home as a friend for Shabbat in their house, would be the most warm,
nicest,
share his home and his life, right? Because
Rabbi, I don't want to whitewash this, okay?
I agree. I'm going to push back here. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pushing back. I don't want to whitewash this because there are men who I know, very religious men, that when I'm talking to them, and I'm dressed modestly, okay? Yeah. I think I'm modest in my demeanor, are looking
You're very modest, Laurie. You've got a 10.
Like, hello, like, you look at me like this. That's not comfortable to me.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying many times, and I've had this because there are many people who, people come to my house and say, "Oh, we ate last night by so and so's house," and I'm saying to myself, really, that person walks down the street, literally their glasses off and their face covered. How was it? And they'll describe the most amazing experience.
I agree. That can happen. But I just want to say something.
Go, Ron.
Judaism believes that every good value and every good character trait can get radicalized. And modesty can get radicalized. And I think it's very important to call that out. We don't believe in covering our faces unless you're wearing a mask for Corona, in which case cover your face. We don't believe in, we believe that that everybody should be friendly and you should greet each other. You walk down the streets of Jerusalem and you say Shabbat Shalom to a man and he ignores you. Sorry, I'm going to call that what it is. Rude. Okay?
That's rude.
And no, but even the not looking, there's a 14-year-old boy who's not looking at a Momentum woman walking down the street. I'm not talking about if she's dressed modestly or not. I'm sorry. He's not seeing, the potential in her. Whatever, this particular example aside, I just want to say that every good thing can get radicalized and modesty can be used to silence women, and it should not happen. That is not a Jewish value.
There's no question. I just want I'm pointing out the flip side is that it also has to be respected, like Shoshana K mentioned, that the fact that people do not want to have to see everything that there is to see in the street.
I agree, and part of that is cultural. You have an American young woman, particularly from a college campus, who's literally coming from the hookup culture, and she's walking through Mea Shearim, and you know what I mean? It's so beyond foreign. So some of that is cultural. I grew up, like I said, Orthodox my whole entire life. I never saw a man not look at a woman until I got to Israel, okay? So part of that is Torah and Judaism, part of that is cultural, and part of that is radical.
And you'll also find...
We have to be able to take each child... We teach that each child has to be educated according to the way. I know in my house myself, I have a 16-year-old son right now. I have a 13-year-old son. Each one is so different. I know my 16-year-old is going through a very major, spiritual growth stage in his life, spurt. And depending on who's in our house, he is the friendliest, cutest, nicest boy, but he is working very much on protecting what goes into what he sees. Now, he would always be so respectful. My other child, who's completely opposite to him, would be hanging out next to the girl, and that's okay as well. For each child, and I will support my oldest son and if any of our students ask, I noticed Nassan's not really looking at me, I would be honest and say, you know what? Right now he's really working on his own spiritual. But they will tell you, they'll be he's the cutest thing. He's so polite. When he's having a conversation, but he's trying in his own.
I think that Rookie was just pointing at balance and not being radicalized.
Yeah, totally. That's really important.
So I think it's important to say, as Laurie said about not whitewashing, I am often put in a position where I'm asked to defend Jewish values, and that's fine. That's cool. That's what I do professionally. But I will not defend the indefensible. There are Orthodox people who do wrong things.
100%. And Neely always says, Neely Cousins always would say, momentum, major. You're in machat.
Yeah.
So Neely would always, that was like a big famous phrase. Do not judge Judaism by the Jews.
Okay, wait. Sorry. I'm going to push back on that.
No, second. I just want to say, because there's more. There's other opportunity to come to this, to this point. But for this segment, there's one more question.
Are you having fun moderating these women?
Totally. It's like, by the way, I have 6 daughters. So.
Any sons?
Yeah, one. The prince himself. Okay.